This is ReneMarie from the ReneMarie studio, broadcasting live on Facebook. My special guest today is Lisa Deck, and she has an incredible Making a Difference story. We'll be broadcasting at 11, but we wanted to test run it to see if we could have her join onto the Facebook Live. I saw it done one other time where they have the second guest up on the right hand side of the screen. So I'm going to get up and see if I can invite her to be a part of it, and then of course we're going to broadcast at 11, but I just want to be showing it from her avenue, and I'm showing it from my avenue, and we're really getting the word out much broader, and this is awesome.
How's that? So I can see me live and I see you. But this is making sound. Oh, hi, Lee. My friend is on.
Yeah, this is awesome, isn't it?
It is. Okay, ringer is silent. I don't know.
Hi, everyone. We're doing something new and different today. Lisa and I are broadcasting dual from her Facebook Live and my Facebook Live, and we're really getting the word out to everybody about strokes and aphasia and Lisa's story, which is incredible. We were going to do this as a test run and then log off and hook back on, but it's too difficult to get everybody intact, so we're not going anywhere. Right, Lisa?
Right, sounds good.
Yay!
Oh wait, I'm hearing myself.
That's okay, take your time, take your time. We're not supposed to start the show until 11, but please pardon our broadcasting test runs. We're really just trying to try something new with Lisa broadcasting Facebook Live on hers and me broadcasting Facebook Live on my page. And oh, it's so exciting.
Hi, Lisa. I kind of can hear myself, but it's not too bad.
Okay, I can hear you well.
I think I'm probably hearing through you through my phone, which is crazy.
But do you need to have your phone on? The volume? I would shut the volume off on your phone. That's what I did on mine.
I tried. All right. Nope, I still hear it.
Does it bother you?
A little bit, but it's okay.
Okay. So let's start. Let's rock and roll, since we have this set up, and I don't know how many more times we're going to be able to have it set up, but it's pretty awesome, and I wish I could see it. Let me see if I could see it on my other phone. I have dual phones, of course. I just want to see how it's...
Oh, I see a few friends joining. This is so crazy.
Isn't it awesome? Now, could they ask them if they could see me as well?
Can you see Renee as well, friends? I don't know if they would be able to unless I was facing it at you.
No. On mine, I'm gonna take a photo of this, and this is awesome. Wait until. Oh my gosh, crack me up. Innovations, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, well, we're winging it. It's on mine. I don't know what's going to come out of it, and I don't know what the broadcast
My friend just told me she can see both of us. So, you know what? I'm going to, after your introduction, I'll do a quick one in case anyone can't see you.
Okay, awesome.
About what we're doing.
I am so excited. This is so awesome and so exciting that we have the possibility to not only tap into my followers and my world and people that are engaged in me, but Lisa Deck as well. Lisa Deck is an incredible story. Her story is making a difference around the world and locally as well. She suffered a stroke, the first stroke, 1 week before she began college. Am I correct, Lisa?
Correct.
1 week before she began college at 20.
No, before graduating college.
Before graduating college, sorry. And what this show is about, not primarily, but one of the points in this show is to show people that it can happen to anybody at any specific time. It does not matter where you are, what your age is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't discriminate. It touches everybody. And that's what this story is about. This story is also about someone that has, Lisa Deck, who has really taken her experiences and turned it into a story of survival and dedication, and really making a difference in the world to help prevent stroke. She has become an advocate with the American Stroke Association. She has began her own organization. She's got a wonderful family, and so we're gonna go right into the show after Lisa says a few words. But I'm really happy to have this opportunity on September 13th, Wednesday, September 13th at 11 a.m. to really broadcast my Stroke of Luck internet TV show. So take it away, Lisa. Nice to hook up with you on this venue. I can't believe both of us are on the show.
Well, thank you so much. I can't believe it either. And I just want to say hi to, because some of my friends have joined as well. And it's funny, I want to stop all of them and say, let's have a one-on-one conversation, but that's not for today. I'm just honored to be able to speak with ReneMarie on her show and share my story and share what has happened in my life and has really given me hope, and I think gives other people hope, because I have been through the ringer. A lot of us have, but I've come out on top, and I'm very fortunate and blessed. And I'm just really happy to tell my story again and just kind of share some of the things I've learned and what I'm doing and ways other people can get involved to make a difference in stroke. And I think it's so amazing. ReneMarie and I connected at the lobby day in Washington, D.C. with the American Heart Association. And we met each other there, had heard of each other prior, but I think it's just a testament to survivors everywhere that come together and jointly make a difference for each other and for others. And so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you to friends who are joining, and let's get started.
Yeah, thank you to my friends too. I keep saying that this network of Facebook Live and just the social media really does wonderful information, educational, really networking and socializing with all of you is really a blessing, because in our world, which is the stroke experience world, the aphasia world, it's really important that we tell our stories to let people tap in to understand how you can prevent a stroke, or how you should have compassion for people who have had a stroke, or just really to understand how it feels to have a stroke. So we're going to begin. Lisa, I just want you to, I know your followers know your story, but my followers don't. And we're going to actually be videotaping this as well. So we're going to put it up on our website. So it's going to be in a whole bunch of different venues to really tell your story. So tell us a little bit about your stroke, your story prior to your stroke. Like, how was your life? What were you doing? What was your visions for your life, that you thought were going to happen?
Sure. So I grew up in Warwick, Rhode Island, and I have one brother with my parents, and we had a very typical childhood. I think I was always somebody who did a lot and wanted to achieve throughout my life. I started young, doing lots of activities and sports, and did well in school, kind of just was on a path to do great things. I wanted to, and I was hoping to do that. In high school, I played 3 sports. I was class president. I was very involved and did a lot of things. I was fortunate to go to American University in Washington, D.C. I went on a partial scholarship, and I had so much fun there. I mean, I met some of my best friends to this day. Some of my college friends are some of my best friends.
Wow. And
just really had an amazing experience living in D.C., taking classes, making friends, just really, I think college is kind of that highlight of your life. You have so much fun and you do so many cool things.
Yeah.
And so that was my life. I was about to graduate on May 11th.
What did you study? What were you studying?
I was studying business, so I was a marketing and finance major. And I had already secured my job for that September to work with a consulting firm. So I was all set. I was going to take the summer off and have lots of fun. Hi, Joy. Hi, Julie. And I was going to do that and then start my job. So that was my plan. I think if you had asked me, I had big plans to make a difference with work. That was where I was going, and wanted to travel, wanted to work hard. And that was kind of where I was. In May of 1997, all of that changed. It was about probably about a week before graduation when I started not feeling well.
And what do you mean? What do you mean by not feeling like? How did you? Were there any? I have a question for you before you explain that. Did you ever know what a stroke was? What was your concept of a stroke when you thought about someone experiencing a stroke, or if someone who would have a stroke?
You know, it's interesting because I had heard of strokes, kind of like you heard of heart attacks. You didn't really know what they were, but you assumed they happened to old people, to old men, actually. I always thought a stroke is something that happened to somebody like my grandfather.
Right.
I didn't know the signs and symptoms. I didn't know anything because I was a relatively healthy, athletic, girl who just didn't know. And I was educated, but you just don't know about stroke.
Right.
And I do think since 20 years has gone by, people know more, but that's part of my mission, is to educate and help people understand.
Right. So how were you feeling at that particular time? You said you weren't feeling well, so how weren't you feeling well?
So I would say I felt pretty terrible. I had a headache, and it was a severe headache. I'm guessing migraine-esque, but I never had a migraine before, but severe headache. I remember sensory being, the lights were too bright, sounds were too loud. I just would lay in my bed, and then my left arm went numb. And that seemed strange, but I thought maybe I slept on it wrong. It felt as if, I had slept on it, had pins and needles. I could move it, but it was numb. At that point, I think then my legs started getting numb. So both sides were numb, and my parents said, you probably should go to the doctor. So a friend brought me to a hospital. I had all the tests, and they sent me home. I think they thought that it was a migraine. They said, you're probably stressed. You're a college kid. You just need to go home.
Yeah. Where did your parents live? You were at college, so...
I was in D.C., and they were in Rhode Island, so 7-8 hours away.
Yeah.
So
could you imagine?
Worried.
Could you imagine? I mean, we're parents.
Now that I'm a mom, I can't imagine.
Could you imagine? I mean, yes. So go ahead.
So they sent me home, and they said, if you have more problems, follow up with the doctor. I really think they thought that I was a young college kid. I was partying, stressed. That's what I think they assumed. So I went home, and over the next couple of days, my symptoms became worse. My face went numb. I remember trying to talk to friends and having some difficulty communicating. It felt as if my left side of my lip was numb, and the words just weren't coming out right. I was a bit confused. There were kind of all these symptoms. I remember waking up on a Wednesday morning, and I called my mom and I said, I can't take it anymore. I have to go to the doctor's. And I had an appointment the next day with a neurologist, but I canceled that appointment and just went in the day before. So I went to Georgetown Hospital that morning. Ironically, all my friends had brought me to the hospital 3 days prior. At this point, because it was exams, one dropped me off and another came to meet me.
Wow.
But as I was sitting there by myself, there was a sign that says, May is Stroke Awareness Month. Do you know the symptoms of a stroke? And they were all listed.
Wow.
And it was an American Stroke Association sign.
Wow.
And,
wow.
And ironically, I had all those symptoms.
Wow.
But my first thought is, I can't be having a stroke.
You're too young.
21.
Yeah.
That can't be me. And within a few hours of testing and quickly getting back there, I was told that I had suffered a stroke.
Wow. Now you had suffered a stroke already. What you had prior to, that was your first. So when did you suffer the stroke? Did they let you know, like, when you suffered the stroke? Was it the first time that you had experienced those headaches? It was probably the first time.
You know, it was probably, they said it was within the past few days.
Yes, yes.
It was an ischemic stroke. So it wasn't, they didn't say this is exactly when you had it, but my guess is when I was having the confusion speaking, that's when it really happened.
Right.
So I was admitted into the hospital at that point, and they did all the tests, and they couldn't determine what had caused it. At that point, too, my left hand had a little bit of numbness, and I was having some trouble controlling the fingers. So it was definitely a rough few days, but the doctor said, you can go home, we're going to continue to follow up with you, but we want you to go for graduation. So I was released from the hospital so that I could go to graduation the next day. I don't really remember graduation. I had cotton balls in my ears. I had to have friends next to me walking across the stage because I wasn't very stable.
You still had a headache? You still had
Still had headaches, still had all the symptoms. The numbness had subsided a bit, but I still didn't have control of my hand.
Wow.
But I was determined to go to graduation. I did. I took a nap after that. Didn't really do the parties, but at that point, the doctors said, we're going to follow up with you, but we don't know what caused this. Stay on an aspirin a day. And so I went into that summer with that situation.
Wow, wow. Let me ask everybody something before we go. Is the sound okay? Because you can see your computer better than I can, Lisa. Just I want to make sure that they can hear clearly.
Someone gave me a thumbs up.
Okay.
Sounds okay?
Yeah. Because I just want to make sure. Yeah?
Great.
Okay, great. I just didn't want any dual vibrations that they weren't able to hear us and I wasn't able to see it. So you went to graduation, which you don't remember your graduation.
Thank you, Brian. He can see both of us.
Good. I can't believe it. Anyway, so okay, so you went to graduation. You didn't even remember graduation. Graduation was hard. You had to have people next to you. So what did you do after graduation? What was your next step like after? What were they telling you had to do next since you had experienced a stroke?
So at that point, they wanted me to follow up with a neurologist, and I had some OT scheduled just to gain the strength back in my hands. But the doctors kind of said, you can go back to living your life. Like, we don't know why, but you can live your life. And as you can imagine, this rocked my world at 21. And I was starting work in September. So I had a great summer. I just lived fully. I went on roller coasters and I visited friends and I just really had as much fun as I could. And I think it was my first look at loss and knowing that life is short. And it was the first time I realized that. And so at that point, I just really tried to have a great summer, knowing I was starting work. So I was home in Rhode Island and in DC, and I went through my therapy, gained all the function back in my hand, and I started work that September.
So were you going to work in Washington, D.C., or were you going to work in Rhode Island?
Washington, D.C.
In Washington, D.C. So, I was going to say that you were going to, so you actually... So what did they tell you? What was your next step? What was your next step on your career since you had suffered a stroke? And I know you were planning on going to work, but what happened?
And I was able to start. They said you're stable. You can go work. And so I started training, and it was a consulting company, and I did 6 weeks of training. And the training was a lot. It's all these young people, and you did 3 weeks in Washington, and then you did 3 weeks in Chicago. Did
the stroke affect your did you have any kind of aphasia with the stroke?
Not at this point.
Okay.
No, I did not have. I mean, like I said, I had that short-term moment, but then it came back.
Yeah.
I think I did have some aphasia within the last couple of years, but that's the end of my story.
Well, but why I ask is because, sometimes, and actually I'm doing a show on Saturday with one of our board members, Bobby Baby Walker. He has suffered 3 strokes recently. And if you look at him, you don't realize that he has suffered a few strokes. And he looks fine, but his mind has been altered. So I'm just interested if it altered your mind or your brain in any way during that first episode of your stroke.
I think at the first one, no, I don't think there was much. I think it altered my emotions. It altered how I looked at the world. So again, minorly, but it was one of those things that affect you and you know that this is terrible and horrible, but yet I was okay.
Yeah.
And so that was the ultimate feeling. I was okay and I could continue living my life.
I think with me, it made me more sensitive and more I think tender is coming to me, but it's almost like I don't have any filters, for emotions, because the world is really hard out there, and when you go out in the real world, people are just themselves, and sometimes they say things, and to me I'm like, oh my gosh, why are people that way? You should be loving, I think that's how it affected me, in my life. So you just felt normal and you just lived your life.
I think at that point, I have since had 3 more, and I can very much relate to those emotions after a couple of the others.
Yeah.
So my story continued at that point. I had done 6 weeks of training. I came home from Chicago, and I went to my first job, my first client site, and I had all the symptoms again. My left side went numb. I had a headache, and I remember calling my neurologist, and I said, "I'm on my first day of work, but my side's numb." And he said, "You need to come here." I said, "Well, I can't. I'm working." And he said, "Lisa, you need to get in a cab and come to the hospital right now."
Wow.
And he was very strict, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, he was kind of mean. And I went to the hospital, and it was at that point I was diagnosed with a second stroke.
Because they found that you had had a second stroke.
Second stroke. So they did another MRI. They could see another spot on the MRI where another area had been affected. Now at this point, I laughed because my bag was still at work, and I had to call my coworkers and say, "Can you bring my bag? I thought I'd be back, but now I'm in the hospital." And I ended up in the hospital for 3 weeks at that point.
Oh my God! So why? Because they were trying to figure out.
Yes, I was kind of an anomaly. They didn't know why I was having these strokes, and they said, "We can't let you go. You've had 2 within months of each other. We can't let you go until we determine a cause." Wow. And the first stroke was challenging. My diagnosis at this point was even more challenging. They diagnosed me at the time with central nervous system vasculitis. And this disease is not common, and they weren't exactly sure of the treatment. They had a thought on how they should treat it, but it was kind of, I wouldn't say experimental, but they said, "Here's what we plan to do. We hope it works," which is not exactly reassuring. But they decided to do chemotherapy, blood thinners, and steroids.
Wow.
And I remember being diagnosed with that, and it felt like the end of the world because everything life how I knew it was going to change. And I said, "Well, can I work?" And they said, "Not initially." So I was out of work for 3 or 4 months at that point to start treatment. Wow. And I was debilitated. I was debilitated because of all the treatment they were giving me. And that actually lasted for a good 4 years.
What kind of treatment? What kind of treatments were they giving you?
So there was the chemotherapy, which started by mouth, but eventually became infusions, which caused me to lose a lot of my hair, nausea, fatigue. I was also on prednisone, which is a steroid, and that causes weight gain. I went into menopause. I had osteopenia. I mean, the side effect list, depression, everything. I mean, there was tons. The ups and downs of prednisone are very, very tough. And I was stubborn. I was determined to stay in Washington, D.C. So my parents would take turns living with me and my roommates. I look back and I think it was just pure determination and wanting to live my life.
But you know what? We have to have the determination. If we don't have that determination, we're not going to achieve the success of a recovery. You have to fight it. You have to have this inner strength to fight it because, it's really a battle. And if you don't have that determination, if you don't have that drive, it's really hard. It's really hard.
Right.
It's really hard.
And I think that was it. And when you talk about emotions, the emotions that happened over those 4 years were extreme. High highs, low lows. I was also couldn't control my emotions at times, so I burst out crying or laughing. I guess the expression that keeps coming to mind is "beat me down." It kind of beat me down.
Wow.
I kept trying to get back up, but the medications and the treatment were trying to beat me down.
But it didn't beat you down. I mean, it's almost like you lose the inning, but you win the game.
Right. And there was definitely moments. I was very weak at times, had trouble walking here and there, had trouble, with my hands and things going numb. So it was a very difficult time, and I think in my early 20s it really became who I was, and that was a hard thing. I didn't have my profession. I did go back to work part of the time, which I laugh at because I was working full-time, doing chemotherapy, doing blood thinners, going to doctors, working out. I was doing it all, and I think that's what helped get me through.
Yes. So I'm sorry. So you were on chemo. Was that for the diagnosis of the stroke?
That was for the disease. So the disease vasculitis, they were attempting to treat it from both ways. So they were doing Cytoxan, which was an attempt to kill some cells, and then prednisone, which is an attempt to decrease the inflammation of some cells.
Wow.
And that was kind of the best that they could do. Sadly, in May of 2000, I had a third stroke. Same symptoms, same go to the doctor. At that point, and this was one of the hardest things I went through, is the doctors told me I could no longer work. They said, every time you're doing something, your body can't handle it. And they took me out of work at that point, and I've been disabled since. And it hasn't stopped me from living my life, but it has prevented me from the professional desires that I had. You know, but still to this day, and as we get to kind of my modern story, you'll see that when I do things, when I get fatigued, when I'm overdone, it does affect my body.
Yeah. I mean, I still to this day, that's some of my lingering stroke effects, is that when I get tired, I have to really take care of myself. I really have to listen to my body, because if I don't, I get too fatigued and I get knocked out. And so I really do have to rest and take care of myself and all that. So yes, so I understand it.
So I get to now for a little bit of the good news. Soon after that, I was declared in remission of my disease. I was able to stop treatment. So treatment stopped. I didn't have any more strokes for at least 6 months. I was declared in remission. And I think this is the good part of my story. And this is where I couldn't work, but I found ways to give back. And I found ways to live a full life, even though everything had changed. And I think back to that, and I lived somewhat in that, I wouldn't say symptom-free, I had symptoms, but stroke-free for a good 14 years. And that's when I really got involved in doing different things with the American Stroke Association and different volunteer opportunities. And I'm not sure, I know that that's what you do too. And then if you want me to talk about what I do.
Yeah, no. First, I just want to understand, like, how did you find the American Stroke Association? I know you remember seeing that sign back when you first were sitting, waiting for your family or for someone to come and bring you to the hospital. And you saw that sign of stroke symptoms, and it was the American Stroke Association. It's almost like a little wink that, you know, telling you what's going on. So how did you connect officially with the American Stroke Association?
So this is a funny story. I decided when I started feeling better that I wanted to have a celebration of life. I think that I just really wanted to do something. I was alive, and I wanted to thank all the people who had been there for me. But then I was like, how do you do that? Do you just throw a party? But of course I thought big. I wanted to have a 200, 300 person party. And then it kind of got me thinking, wait a minute, maybe I should give back. And so I called the American Stroke Association, and I said, hi, I'm Lisa. I've had 3 strokes. I really want to raise money for a good cause. Can I do that for you? Which I don't think many people do that. It was kind of funny, just because they didn't really know what to do with me. They said, you just want to raise money? And I said, yeah, I have an idea. I have this plan. I want to do it. So I ended up talking to some of the staff, and what ended up making the most sense, and was a great goal for me, is I joined the Train to End Stroke Marathon program, which no longer exists. Now there's a spin-off of Teddy's team here in Massachusetts, but the idea is that you raise money and then you walk or run a half marathon or marathon. So I decided to raise money at my celebration of life, and I walked a half marathon at Disney. Wow. So it was a combination of having this party to celebrate the fact that I was alive and that so many people had helped me and we were going to help others. I think we raised about $15,000. It was really a successful event. It was just me going door to door, but it was fun and a great time, and a lot of people came to be a part of it. And then I was able to walk 6 months later a half marathon at Disney World. So it was really a highlight and a great way to become involved with the Stroke Association.
And they do phenomenal work. I always am raving about the American Stroke Association and all the other organizations around the world. But the American Stroke Association really, they really care about bringing light to individuals and people and educating people, and really they never say no to anybody. Their doors are open for you to join them and to really be a family with them and partner with them, and that's really what I love about them. I love
Right.
about them. So, okay, so you
Yeah.
called them and you connected with them, and so then you began working for them or
No,
volunteering for
I've
them?
never worked for them. So through my connections with fundraising, I ended up learning about advocacy. And I didn't know what advocacy was, but I learned about advocacy, and soon after I was moving back to Washington. I had moved home for about a year, excuse me, after my third stroke, and I was really sick and taken out of work. I had to move home with my parents. At that point, I decided to move back to DC so that I could be there with my friends and kind of recreate my life, how I wanted it to be. Is everything okay?
Yeah, Tracy, what did you say? What did you text me? Facebook it, because I can't see it. I just want to make sure that the volume is okay, because she wanted to text me if there wasn't something. So
Okay.
we'll wait to see her.
So at that point, I moved back to DC, and I called the office there and I said, can I volunteer? So I became a volunteer in the advocacy office in Washington, DC. And again, I didn't really know what advocacy was, but I think it was, when I look back, this was my attempt at getting help for myself, despite the fact I was helping others. I was so desperate to connect with other survivors. I didn't know any young survivors. And I thought, hey, if I can share my story and make a difference by doing that with legislators, what if I can get others? And maybe there are other stories out there. So I took the opportunity to work in the office, and I started doing grassroots advocacy work to, oh, it says there's an echo on Lisa's audio. If you wear headphones, it should help. Is that me? I'm not good at the technology. So tell me if I should do something.
I don't know. Keep talking.
Okay. So anyway, long story short, I started working as a volunteer in the advocacy office, which I did for many, many years, and really created a platform for survivors to use their voice for advocacy.
Wow.
And I think it was really neat because it helped me meet others and be inspired by others, as well as, oh, you know, they just told me if you would use headphones, it might help.
I don't have headphones.
Okay, that's what somebody said.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is new technology. We got both of us on the screens. Like, we're happy. As well, can you understand us? Because I just want to make sure that you could hear us and understand what Lisa is saying. Can you hear me? And
Cindy, can you hear me?
can they hear us?
I don't know, I'm not getting anything.
That's
Oh wait, here. The feedback is because we are hearing Lisa real time and a delay through Renee.
But there's nothing we could do about that because that's I think that's Facebook.
Yeah, we think that's Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, they can hear both of us. I just echo.
Oh, okay.
Nobody really wants to hear this much about me, but
No, we want
I
to hear
guess that's
it.
okay.
We want to hear it. We want to hear
and
it.
now you get me twice.
And I'm videotaping it anyway, so we'll record it and we'll post it right after the show. So go ahead, Lisa.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I became a volunteer, and just that's what I did. I could only do it a couple days a week because I had fatigue and symptoms, but for a few years that's what I did. That was until I got married. So in my personal life at that point, I had met my future husband.
Where did you meet him?
We had both gone to American University, but we were years apart, so not there at the same time. But we eventually connected through friends, and you know, he did not know me as sick. He knew of a girl in college who had had a stroke, but didn't really know me. But we connected, and within a few years after that, we got married. And besides, you know, long-term osteopenia and depression, anxiety, I also went into menopause. And so we knew we couldn't have children, but fortunately, we were lucky enough to build our family through adoption.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is awesome. So I was a volunteer in the DC office until my daughter was born, at which point I stopped to become a stay-at-home mom. And that, of course, did not stop my volunteerism, but that did take a change.
So you were living in Washington at this time, right? Because you had gone back to
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, I was living in Washington.
And you know what? I have a question for you. And I guess you know this. It's probably a question for your husband, but you know, those of us that have experienced a stroke, you know, how did he feel about like your experience with the stroke? Did that, was he concerned about it? Was he concerned about you? I mean, I can't imagine, you know, falling in love with somebody and knowing that they have, but we all should value life and really, you know, appreciate life, and we all could pass at any specific time. It doesn't matter, but it's so vivid to me, you know, because I experienced a stroke like with somebody. Like, how did he feel about that?
You know, it's interesting because we did a piece years ago where they videotaped both of us, and it kind of brings tears to my eyes because he is so strong and accepted me for me. And he knew that I had a lot of baggage. I had a lot of medical problems that weren't going to go away.
Right.
I would forever be a stroke survivor, and once you have one stroke, you're more apt to have another. It wasn't simple. I'm on medications. I have doctors, but he never let that bother him. And
Wow.
I think he saw the good in me and what I had gone through, and he appreciated and loved that. And that's amazing.
That is amazing.
And to this day, he still stands by me. And I saw that even more. He had never gone through all the health problems I had had, but now that he went through them with me the last couple of years. And so I know that he is strong, and he walked into it knowing the complications might exist and took that step anyway. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky.
You're lucky.
And I think we're a good team and we work together, and I'm very lucky.
Wow. And to have two amazing, tell us a little bit about, what's your husband's name?
My husband is Brian.
Brian. And tell us about your children. What's their names?
Oh, their names are Caitlin and Zach, and they're great. They keep me on my toes, busy. Caitlin is a girly girl who loves to try everything and loves animals and her friends and the beach, lots of things like that. Zach is my crazy boy who loves sports and video games and running around like a maniac. And you know, I'm very lucky and blessed to have them as my kids too.
Wow. So, so I know you're living back in Massachusetts.
Correct.
But so tell us what happened in the midst, because you were living in Washington with your husband. You had your children in Washington?
No, so Caitlin was born when we lived in Washington, and then my husband got transferred for work. He got transferred up to New England, so okay. We all moved up here, and soon after Zach was born, and we then became a family of 4.
Right.
And, you know, at that point, my health was good. I was doing a lot of volunteering with the Heart Association, doing things with my kids, and it was kind of the highlight of my volunteering. I became a national spokeswoman for the Heart Association.
Yes.
And that's something somebody just said one day, you know, we picked you, would you do this? And it was really an opportunity to share my story to this point at a national level.
That was this past year, 2017 or 2016?
No, it was actually 2014 to 2015.
Okay.
So that was a time that I laughed because some of it was silly. You know, they have these pictures on billboards and different, you know, interviews. But ultimately, it was a way for me to let people know that stroke does not discriminate and let people know what the signs and symptoms of stroke are. Mm-hmm. And I think raising that awareness is essential. And I had the opportunity to do that at a national level, which was great.
Because let me share with everybody, I'm sure that everybody knows, but it's really important that we provide this information, is that 80% of strokes can be prevented, and you have a 4.5-hour window from the onset of a stroke to get to the hospital to reduce the recovery, to reduce the impact that recovery has on you. So that's why Lisa and I really are passionate about saving lives, and not only saving lives as far as death, because death is the 5th leading cause in the United States, but saving lives because strokes is the 1st leading cause of disability in the country. So just imagine that people are suffering strokes and it just devastates you and shatters your whole world, and then you have to pick up the pieces. So the number one cause of disability in the country is stroke. So it really is important to become aware and really stay in touch with your doctor, and really have to become your own advocate. Let's talk about that, Lisa, because I think that's really important about becoming your own advocate and really getting to know your own world and your own person, because I know that doctors and nurses are doing wonderful work for people, but they only know you when you walk through the door. They don't know your history, they don't know your experiences. So it really is important to have a network of people around you to build that support system. So if you go into the hospital, I'll share a little story. My sister, she's a wonderful advocate. Like, she knows every single thing about what has happened to me. And when I go into the hospital for an emergency, she's the one that says, no, this and this has happened to her, and that, like, she informs them of everything, because it really is important. They need to know the whole picture. So let's talk about, advocacy and your own team around you and being your own advocate.
Absolutely. That's actually a great segue. We were just talking about being national spokeswoman, and I took that to heart, and I decided to create a page. I Survivor Lisa Deck is on Facebook. And I did that because I wanted to share the messages of Go Red for Women and American Stroke Association. I thought, here's a perfect platform. So I started doing that. And it's ironic because my whole life changed that year. And part of it was me listening to my own advice about being an advocate. At that point, I had the same symptoms. In March of 2015, the same symptoms came up. My left side went numb, and I had a severe headache. And my first reaction to everything when I talk is take action. But I waited a couple days, and I knew that was my body. I knew my body, sometimes this happened to it, and usually it would go away. But after 4 days, I decided to take my own advice, and I went to the hospital. And this began my new story of stroke. It was my fourth stroke, and my life was about to change. But I want to mention being my own advocate. 20 years ago, if I didn't go to that second hospital, who knew what might have happened? And 2.5 years ago, if I didn't go to the hospital when I had the symptoms, I may not be okay. And I think knowing my body and knowing what I need to do and what I need to say, and having those people in your corner who know it as well. I have my parents who have lived through this with me, who have been my support and my confidants throughout, and my spokespeople. I mean, they went to fight for me for years. And now I have a husband as well who does that. And I also have a lot of friends and family who also know my story and know what I need. So I think it's critically important to be your own advocate and to speak up for yourself. And I tell people this all the time when I'm speaking, that is, you know your body and you need to fight for what you know is right.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's great to bring up, and definitely something that people can take away from our discussion is know the symptoms. If you have the symptoms, take action and follow your own advice.
And honestly, when you go to the hospital, if they're, and I'm not a medical, I want to start off with, I'm not medical, I have no doctor's experience, no nurse experience, but I do have my own personal experience. And when you go, another advocate of mine are my two girls. They know have learned my history and my path, and so they're my advocates when I go to the hospital as well, or to the doctor. But what I was going to say was, you have to listen to what the doctors are recommending to you. If they're not, when you go to the hospital, they're talking to you about what is going on. They're recommending that this is the course that we have to take. And just do your homework before you take action to anything. If it's an emergency, I have nothing to say about that. But if it's you're in the hospital, you have to really do your homework. Everything, we need to work together. I remember my father was in the hospital, in ICU in Hackensack University. There was a nurse practitioner there, and she was so phenomenal. Every morning they would have a team come of kids that were learning how to be nurses and doctors and stuff. And she would invite me to be a part of the conversation about my father's care, because I knew the personal side. I knew the parts that they didn't know. So she added me as an important piece of his recovery and his care. And that's all I'm saying, is to make sure that you have your history as a part of their care. That's my biggest lesson at the moment, so that people could, because if you go down the wrong course and you take the wrong meds, or you take the wrong, it could affect you. So we all have different allergies, and we all have different reactions to medicine. So it really is important to be your own advocate. That's my point. So So after your fourth stroke, so how did I didn't hear you say this, Lisa. So I know you had your fourth stroke. So you were already an advocate for the American Stroke Association. You were already on the platform working for the volunteering for them. And how did you suffer your fourth stroke? What was the symptoms that you were experiencing? Because they diagnosed something else. So. Right.
Correct. This was in March of 2015, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. My side went numb again. And actually the day before is when I went to the hospital. And I went blindly. I don't know why. I knew I needed to go, but I was still shocked when they told me it was a stroke. And I didn't know what that meant. Had my disease come back? Was I going to have to go through treatment? And this was all new, because I now have a family. This was different than when I was in my 20s.
Yes.
That was me, and I was very self-focused then. And now this became a new fear. And
we'll do anything for our families.
Absolutely.
I mean, we fight for our families.
Right. So that was my fourth stroke, and they weren't sure why, but they discussed my disease. They wanted to do another test. And within a couple weeks, they had done another angiogram. And this angiogram definitively said that I have Moyamoya disease. And most likely that's what I had had for the prior years.
How old were
and
your kids?
How
old were your children?
My children were 8 and 6 at the time.
Okay. So I can imagine how they felt.
Yeah, they knew that I was in the hospital, and they came in on St. Patrick's Day, and a nurse had made cupcakes for all the patients and them. But a lot of what I did was to protect them. I didn't tell them everything because I needed to protect them, and I needed to protect myself. And within the course of probably a month, a lot of teary nights, a lot of stress, I learned that Moyamoya disease, if untreated, can kill you. And there is no cure for Moyamoya disease, but there is a treatment. So I learned that I would need 1 brain surgery, which was terrifying. The next appointment, I learned I need a 2nd brain surgery. And I couldn't believe this. How is this possible? And so I soon learned I needed to have a left-sided brain surgery and a right-sided brain surgery. They would be bilateral brain bypass surgeries. And so they're major surgery where they cut into your head and they harvest a blood vessel, a vein, and then they reattach it to another blood vessel to increase the blood flow. And then they take another vessel and lay it on your scalp for blood to seep in.
Wow.
So these are like 8 to 10 hour surgeries. And after another month or so, I made the decision to go to California for the surgeries. The neurosurgeon, Dr. Steinberg at Stanford, had the highest success rate that I could find in the country. And despite having to leave my family, I knew that if they were going to do surgery in my brain, I needed to go to the best. So in June of 2015, I traveled across the country with my husband, and my mom came for part of it, for almost 30 days to have 2 brain surgeries within a week of each other.
Explain.
It was terrifying. It was heartbreaking to leave the kids. I was so scared, but I knew it was what I had to do. And I look back on that, and again, it's a blur, but I was determined, and I had the support, and I had what was called Team Lisa. All the people around me joined and helped me get through this terrible time. My kids were in the best hands. I had family, my dad and my sister-in-law watched them along with my mom. And our community stepped up to help me emotionally, financially, with my children, everything. I mean, the support was amazing. And the ironic part of all this is I was still serving as a national spokeswoman, so I ended up kind of live blogging my experience, not on purpose, and it wasn't crafted, it wasn't planned, but when I felt like writing, I would write, and I would speak, and I would share what I was going through. And it was therapy for me, but I think it also helped people who have gone through tough times to see what it's like.
Right.
And here I am 2.5 years later, and I'm doing well, which is just
a miracle.
amazing.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle.
When you were talking about aphasia a little bit, and mine was very, very temporary, but when I came out of my second surgery, it was definitely probably the hardest 24 hours of my life. The pain, the nausea. I mean, I really didn't even want to go. I was going hour by hour as I looked at the clock because everything was so terrible. But I remember fighting for my kids and knowing that I couldn't give up. I had to keep going. But my biggest fear for the past 20 years was losing my speech. Well, dying, of course, but I didn't ever think I was going to die, but I did know that losing my speech was a possibility.
Wow.
And I remember after the surgeries, the doctors would give me the little monkey tricks, making sure that I could touch my nose, touch the finger, different things like that. And then they would have me say words. And what I thought I was saying was not what was coming out. Biggest fear I realized. I remember they would say, Lisa, say Episcopal Presbyterian. So I'd say Presbyterian. And I'd look at my husband and I'd say, did I say it? And he would go, no. Because he knew that was my worst fear.
Were you aware of it though?
I didn't. I thought I was saying it correctly.
Yeah, because I mean, I remember, I talk about this in my book, that, The Boy Ran. They put a book in front of me that said The Boy Ran, and I just looked and I couldn't communicate it, couldn't do it, couldn't do it. It was really, it was scary. It was scary.
And I knew it could happen. I was told it could happen, which I think was why my anxiety was so high, and it's due to the fact that after my surgeries, I had 7 times more blood flow in my brain than I did before surgery. So I was living with 1/7 the amount of blood flow I should have.
Wow.
But I think the blood flow to the brain confused the brain and made it so my speech wouldn't come out. And then when I flew home a week after my second surgery, across the country, which thinking back was nuts. But I remember when I came home, I had a panic because of that same thing. I laid in bed. No, I was in the living room and I looked at a newspaper and I couldn't read it. I had to sound out the word school. I was like, school. And again, it was one of those things that was the brain and the speech not working. But I panicked because nobody told me I wouldn't be able to read. And eventually we called the doctors, and that was along with the blood flow, the confusion. So that feeling is terrible. It's such a hard thing to be able to not be able to say what you want to say.
Wow. Wow. I know. You brought this up, about your support system, and, we talked about advocacy, but I really believe, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, that one of the biggest necessities and the most important pieces to recovery is having love around you. Because if we don't have that love around us, that support around us, that feeling that we have nothing to fight for, no hope, nothing to really drive us, and it really is important to have love around you in any illness, any situation in life, in general. Love is the answer. Love is the answer to have around you, because it's scary. It's scary what people are going through and in the hospitals and strokes. It's very scary. But your story is just really, it brings hope to people, that you can make it through anything. As long as you have an advocacy around you, as long as you have love around you, as long as you have and this is one of the reasons that I was invited to be an ambassador, is because me as a stroke survivor, I can say to another stroke patient or families of a stroke patient that you have to do it yourself. they have to be the ones to want to get better, and they have to be the ones. But to me, I understand that it's kind of hard to understand that, because when you experience a stroke, your mind is shattered. You're like, it's almost like a computer. It needs to be defragmented. So how do you get defragmented and then begin to trust again and have hope and really drive to be successful?
Right. I concur. It's interesting because over the past 20 years of being an advocate and a volunteer, I have met so many survivors, and I say the word survivor proudly. I'm proud to be a survivor. Do I wish a stroke on somebody? Absolutely not. But where I am today is a direct result of what has happened to me. And I find it interesting because there's an immediate connection with other survivors when you meet them. And I think it's an understanding. It's a similarity. And when I tell my story, sometimes I think, who wants to hear it? Yet I realize that my story is a lot of survivor stories, and I just have the opportunity to tell it. And I also think to people who haven't gone through such adversity or trials, it does. Like I said, it's not me. I think I'm a nice person, I'm a special person, but I'm nobody special. But I am somebody who has been through it and can provide hope, because yes, I am sitting here today. And I never take that for granted. It's something that I every day appreciate something small, and I have to sometimes step back and have that awareness and that perspective that sometimes goes away because life is so crazy and wild. And I sometimes take that moment, not all the time, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely frazzled, but I think that possibly losing life has given me a new perspective to life. And I think that's a similarity with many survivors and many patients and people who have gone through tough things. So I think it's awesome that we are able to have this conversation, and I think there's so many other survivors around this country and around the world that have similar stories and similar understandings. And I think it's so amazing the power that all of us come together can have.
I know. It's humbling, that we have this opportunity. I believe it's a second chance at life, and I look at things in a softball term, in a sports term, like I'm in my extra inning. What am I going to do with that extra inning? Am I going to win the game, or am I going to just give up? So this is the opportunity that I have to, that we have in life to make a difference and really to help people and show people the way. And
along that line, I say go for the Grand Slam.
Yes, that's me. I love to go for the Grand Slam. But yeah, so it really is important. It really is important. And your story is just, a wonderful story, a really honorable story. And it continues. Are you, so they had the 2 surgeries. Are you done having strokes? Is that,
Knock on wood, we hope so.
Do they think that because you had the 2 surgeries that they fixed the
goal.
issue?
Yes, that is the goal. So the percentage is extremely high, in the 90s, that once people have the bilateral brain bypass surgeries, they don't usually have 96% chance of not having another stroke, and most live a normal life expectancy. Wow. Now I still have a lot of limitations in terms of fatigue and even work. I can do work, but I need to get my rest, and I need to be hydrated, and I'm on aspirin for life. So there are things that I still will deal with, but I think that this is a really good treatment that hopefully will prevent me from having strokes again.
Wow. How long ago was your surgeries? How long?
2.5 years ago now.
Wow. It's only been 2.5 years. It's only been 2.5 years. You and I went down to, let's talk about the lobby day in Washington, D.C., which was a phenomenal privilege to be a part of with the American Stroke Association. And you were the MC for one of the main events there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Actually, it's funny because this is probably my favorite Heart Association, Stroke Association role that I have. So it was probably about 16 years ago when I was volunteering in the office. They were having lobby day, which is when anywhere from 300 to 700 advocates from around the country come in to speak with legislators to promote heart health and stroke positive messaging and programs at the national level. And again, I think I mentioned how I wanted to do grassroots advocacy with survivors. So at one of the luncheons, I said, what if we could get all the survivors in a room together? And I said, I just think the power of that would be amazing. And I personally was looking at it on a personal level, how amazing it would be to meet other survivors. But from a legislative perspective, these stories make a difference. And I think even 15 years ago, that wasn't as much on the radar. I think nowadays people tell stories to make a difference, tell stories to kind of get what they want. But back then it wasn't as common. And so the very first one, I want to say we had maybe 75 survivors in a room. And it was awesome. It was awesome. We created this program and just talked about how you could use your story to make a difference. But we also gave survivors time to talk amongst themselves, to kind of relate and bond and, share stories of what works in their state or their level and how could they do that. So fast forward to this past year when it was happening again, and they have since turned it into a Heroes Luncheon. So all the attendees from Lobby Day come to this luncheon, and they use it to give awards. But they were very kind to have me as the MC since I had founded the luncheon years before. And it was just a privilege to be up there and to be able to talk and share a bit of my story, but really recognize some of the top advocates in the country. And again, just be filled with power and this energy that I think gets you going and excited and lets you bring that home with you. So it was really an honor to be a part of it. And, go up to Capitol Hill and you're sharing your story with legislators who are shocked, because both of us look just fine. And I'm not saying you need to be, it's kind of an invisible illness, but it's amazing when you look fine and then they hear what you've been through, and it really impacts what legislators are doing, which ultimately helps shape public policy. Yeah, so it's really a neat opportunity.
And you say, we look fine, but there's so many people that aren't as fortunate as we are to be able to go back in the mainstream of life. We were able to flow right back in the mainstream with our challenges. But, mine happened at age 26, which was over 26 years ago, 27 years ago. So I was a young survivor as well. And I also had the drive, and I never really looked back. It was like, okay, what do I need? I was like, what do I need to do? Like, how do I fix this? So, but there, I love your the way that you talk with such compassion and understanding for people, for everybody. You have such a gift at caring for people and expressing yourself through the platform of emceeing, and you did a great job. You did a great job. And I was honored to be a small part of that. And to go to I knew that I always put it on my checklist to go to Washington, D.C. to be a lobbyist for my cause, for our cause. Mm-hmm. And I knew that there was a lot of, you got to go where changes are made, and to the senators and the legislators and the Congress, that is where changes are made.
Absolutely.
And it was really, it was a milestone in my life. It was a milestone in my life. Yeah. So
really amazing.
I can't wait till next year. Talk about, we only have a few minutes left, I believe, yes. But talk about your sister's Heart Incorporated. Talk about that, where people could send donations, how could they help you, what's going on with that?
Sure. So there are two other women in our town who, one is a survivor herself of peripartum cardiomyopathy, and another woman has a daughter who was born with a congenital heart defect. And the three of us came together kind of as neighbors, as friends, and through the Heart Association. And we decided we wanted to make a difference. And long story short, we are now a nonprofit organization. It is going into our second year. We had our first fundraiser last year, and all of our funds that we raise, 100% go to heart and stroke causes to help. We're helping to fund different research studies. We're, contributing to that. And we also help other patients or families who are going through heart or stroke problems with small scholarships to help them. And last year we had a fundraiser called the Hearttoberfest, and we raised $30,000, which was amazing. We worked really hard on it, and our whole community came together and really supported us. It was our friends and our family and our community, and we live in this amazing town who, as I mentioned, when I was sick, people came together to help me with meals and funds and flowers and anything you could think of. But this is our way of giving back. So the three of us work together. Coming up in just about a month, on October 21st, we're having our second Hearttoberfest. We have a silent auction, raffles. It is an event, a great party. Invitation just went out in the mail. But we do have a website, so if anybody wants to, you can look at this. It's called sistersatheart.org. So sistersatheart.org. And there's information there. Again, I'm not a fundraiser at heart. It's not where my passion lies, really. I'm all about advocating and awareness and speaking. But I know that the funds can make a difference. So that's what we're doing now. Personally, I've had a lot come to me, which is really exciting. I have 3 different speaking engagements coming up. One is at a rehabilitation conference. Another one is at a rare disease genomic festival. And also in our town, we are having a From the Ground Up conference. And it is 6 women who have all gone through trying times. And we are all having an event on September 30th. I think it's only $25 to attend. And it is for women to come share their stories, kind of like a TED Talk, but really women who have gone through trials.
Wow.
Myself and one of my sisters at heart, sisters, is doing it, and then 4 other women. So anyway, lots of fun stuff going on personally, just opportunities for me to share my story, to share what I'm doing and ways people can help. And I just feel really blessed and excited to have so many things to look forward to.
That's good. That's good. And I'm really honored and privileged to have connected with you. And
Me too.
actually, Judy Marlowe Rotway, who is one of my co-hosts on my Stroke of Luck Internet TV show, and one of my board members, is actually the one that connected both of us. We need to give her credit now. I forgot. She actually attended the Go Red for Women that year that you were the advocate for that.
I think it was the Long Island Luncheon. I was the keynote speaker.
Yes.
Which is really neat.
And she got such a passion for meeting you and talking to you, and she actually reached out to you, and that was the connection that Lisa and I made. And then of course we connected on Facebook, and we connected at the Washington DC. But we want to give our kudos to Judy Marlowe Rotway, and I always love to give kudos to Sharon Bean and the American Stroke Association for all the work that they have done and continue to do. And for Lisa, I want to thank you for being a guest on our show. And you're more than welcome to. We could do this again. We could do whatever you want to do it. I think it's important. I think it's important to be partners with people and to use the platform of the internet and of social media and of videos, and so that people may not have the opportunity to watch it right now, but what they can do is go back, and if somebody has heard something or captured their hearts, they can always fast forward to that particular section to see. So it really is a wonderful way to share our stories and to just do our work. I think we're doing it very, very well, and it is an honor and privilege. And I hope that we're going to talk a little bit later on during the season that possibly we'll join together for the telethon.
Great. I was going to say, if you want to mention that, feel free. I think that's a really neat thing. Even some of my friends might want to hear about that.
So we're having our fourth annual telethon on March 25th, 2018. We've done 3 already. It was a vision and a dream of mine 5 years ago, but we've completed 3. The American Stroke Association has always been a beneficiary, as well as ReneMarie's Language of Love Incorporated. We've done 2. We've done actually our 3. We're based in Long Island. We've done 2 at the Madhouse studio, and then we did one at the Mousetrap Cafe. We're actually in negotiations for the fourth, where the fourth one will be, but we're lifting the bar now. Our vision for this telethon is to get one person from each state to represent a stroke family, our stroke family, to bring them together, to really join people together, almost like the way they did last night with the Hands in Hands. We just, the power of joining together and putting everything aside and saying, it doesn't matter, how you feel politically or religiously or anything that's going on negatively or anything. We should all come together and work together for the cause, and to love one another, respect one another. And on that day of our telethon, that is our cause, and we bring stroke and aphasia awareness to the world through that platform. So anybody wants to visit our website, it's www.languageoflovetelethon.org, and you could see our telethons. And so Lisa is going to talk about being her representative from Massachusetts, and my vision is to the way we're doing it now is to live stream Lisa in on that day, and live stream somebody, Demond from Michigan, live stream Bob from the stroke survivor from Florida. So we're really pulling in the pieces for this telethon, and it really is a wonderful way to bring people together. That's our goal and objective, to bring people together and to bring awareness to the forefront. So,
excellent.
Yes. So before we go, is there, let's really wrap it up. I've learned that you have to, go full circle. Tell people really your purpose for your life is. What if there was one thing or three things that really you would want people to get from this conversation and this story? Tell us three things that you think they should remember or pinpoint.
Wow, that can be deep, but I do a lot of deep thinking. I think the first thing is life doesn't always go as planned, and that's okay. I wouldn't change how my life went. It's not how I wanted it to go, but I love where it is. So I think be accepting of that. I think the second advice I would give to people is you too can overcome adversity. I think we all face it, and I think that we have that inner strength. You just sometimes have to figure out how to get to it, but never give up and always keep fighting. And I think the third piece is just to appreciate and have the perspective of enjoying the moment. And I don't always live this. I sometimes forget. Life gets busy, you forget these things.
Yes.
But appreciate the small things, appreciate your life, and make it what you want it to be, because it's the only one we have. So I guess my deep thoughts are that.
That's wonderful. And I love doing this. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Time.
It was
and
great.
Let's blow our kisses. Let's go.
Okay. Mwah.
Goodbye, everybody. God bless everybody, and share a little peace, hope, and love in your life.
Thank you. Bye-bye.